Dungeon Masters of Reddit, which of your sure why nots had the biggest unintended repercussions? Story 1. In a sci-fi mecha campaign, one of my players asked if he could get out of his mech during a mission. It was an infiltration mission, so I figured some stealthy boots on the ground would help. Sure, why not? This became a running habit for him, up to the point that it became a running joke. I decided I'd do something about it, but it backfired hilariously. One of our other players had literally never taken damage the entire campaign. She had earned a reputation as an unkillable and hero of the resistance. However, during a fight against an enemy ace, she took a single massive crit totally unplanned that crumpled her mech and nearly killed her. Cockpit Boy avenged her with a heroic effort of his own, downing the ace's mech before hopping out to attend to his injured comrade. Just as he got her stabilized, there was a sound behind him as the enemy ace climbed into his open mech and aimed its guns right at him. Undeterred, Cockpit Boy demanded a charisma check to call the enemy ace a coward and challenge him to come down and fight like a real man. He succeeded, so the ace obliged, all 6'11" of him. Naturally, our hero made a called shot to the nuts and rolled a crit. The table died laughing and the day was saved. Story 2. I had a trap laid in waiting of a bunch of orcs and wargs that were posing as beggars. My lawful good cleric offered to give them aid and money, and asked if there was anyone hurt. I rolled with it, thinking a room would be a better trap for them. He then proceeded to heal the aging leader, gaining his trust and the respect of the gang. The ranger did some animal handling to clean the wargs up and make them healthier. They then had a loyal group of street thugs to gather info off of. This then spun off into a side campaign of only orcs that was crazy fun and was used for fill-in when I wasn't able ready to DM for a session. Edit Grumsh. This story blew up. Story 3. One of my friends asked once to be able to put spells inside of a bag of holding, and the DM went, why not, you can't safely retrieve them. So at the end of the day the sorcerer would any unspent spells as fireballs into the bag. End of the campaign. After putting a lot of fireballs into the bag they were up against the BBG. He used Dimension Door to get next to the boss and then he turned the bag inside out, blew himself and the boss straight too. Story 4. I used to DM for a small group. Most of the people were a lot of fun to play with, but we had one dude referred to as M that was always arguing with me or other players and generally disrupting the flow of the game in the name of the rules or quality. Sorry for the length. M was one of those people that subscribed to a DD magazine and was constantly comparing my adventures to the ones he was reading about that week. After a while I got tired of all the negativity and offered to let him DM so I could have a chance simply playing the game instead. Sure, why not? M spends a week planning, drawing up actual maps with a protractor and compass on graph paper to create an accurate scale map of the adventure. His latest DD magazine had a puzzle emphasis, so of course that played a major role. When it's time to play, M hands us all hand-drawn maps and the adventure begins. M, you find yourselves in the town of X. In the crisp summer air you smell X and see X. This is happening, that is happening. Suddenly one of you notice a wizard's tournament is taking place. Guy 1. I start looking around for a tavern. Guy 2. Are there any weapon shops? M. No, you need to figure out how to enter the tournament. Guy 3. I'm not a wizard, I don't want to do it. Guy 1 2 mumble in agreement. M. Let's just start the tournament, okay? So as you all enter the first room you notice a pit that is approximately 9 feet in diameter that extends to the walls of your room. On the ground in front of you lay 2 boards. 1 4 7 1 6 long. Guy 4. I take a running start and try to hurdle the pit running along the wall. M. No, you don't want to do that, it has something to do with the boards. Guy 1. Can we leave to go get a long enough board to cross over? Me. I kick the boards into the pit. M. At this point he melts down. No. It's simple, okay? This is the first puzzle and you guys aren't even trying. All you would have to do is lay the boards in a T-shape to cross it. Guy 1. Math was never really my thing. Guy 2. No kidding. I am more of a visual person when it comes to stuff like that. M. Violently tears down his screen, collects his dice, and goes home. We never played together again. Sure, why not, destroyed our entire party. Story 5. Sorcerer decided they wanted to magic jar one of 2 grave knights facing them. Sure, why not? Then the sorcerer decided that they liked their new body and went about trying to murder their companions. That character became a recurring minor villain for much of the remainder of that campaign. Story 6. Traveler game. About 30 years ago, my first campaign, players decided to rob a bank on a high-tech dome-dareless significant later world in the Spinward Marches. To defeat security, they befriended, then poisoned an Imperial Marine and stole his power armor and fusion rifle. I allowed it, like a fool. They robbed the bank, but the Marine had been reported missing and so the military and police were both closing in. After a running firefight they made it to their ship, and made some ridiculous rolls to not get shot down. By this time, the body count was in 3 figures and they've pissed off everyone with a gun within several use. So by the time they exit the dome, they're intercepted by several naval ships, including a cruiser. They had no chance, and they knew it. The only sensible thing to do was surrender and be boarded. They knew that too, so of course they dived the ship straight into the main dome, burning it 5G. The dome blew and everything died, including my idiot players and my campaign. 6 million people dead. Still the biggest atrocity I've ever seen in a tabletop RPG. Learned a lot from that one. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind strangers. Story 7. I had an alchemist and a tinker engineer in one of my games. Both were obsessed with blowing things up and I let them experiment with different things. Well, they ended up making a metal vase that would direct the explosion in a single direction. I thought they would use it to nuke bad guys. One session they were trekking through a mountain pass and I had intentionally taken out a bridge that was the only way across a gorge to force the players to go through a mountain pass, which was basically the next 2 sessions. They ended up using said vase they had made before to create a rocket sled. I gave them a really high DC to succeed. Nat 20. The whole party flew over this gorge hanging onto a sled for dear life. Welp, there goes 2 weeks of prep work in the next 2 sessions. It screwed me, but it was definitely a memorable moment. Story 8. Another I was the player. As a halfling in the Warhammer universe, we came across a herd of goats. I attempted to tame one of said goats and succeeded. I then checked if my halfling could ride said goat and the GM allowed it. GM thought he could kill it off easily. GM was dead wrong. My halfling rode that goat into and back, good times. Story 9. I threw in a random NPC passed out at the tavern everyone was meeting at to discuss their job. Next thing I know the party is following him home, staking out his house, etc. Turns out the fact that he had a purple coat on was too interesting, and my initial campaign got scrapped so they could defeat the purple coats who were plotting to take over the government. Who knew? Story 10. Context. I wasn't familiar with item prices, or how much gold the party had saved. This was a party of 8. Is 2,000 reasonable price for legendary magic items? Sure, why not? Cool. I'm buying a Staff of the Magi, and everyone else will buy 1 legendary magic item. Internal monologue. Edit. So as bad as this was, it honestly ended up making a nice boss fight later. So these 6th-level characters had a bunch of legendary magic items, and were gonna go up against the big bad. I made a mechanic where, at the beginning of the fight, the big bad drained all of the magic item power in the area. As the big bad took damage, he leaked power, and the magic item slowly recovered power, allowing the fight to start out seeming hopeless. But by the end, the players could just straight up obliterate the boss. Lesson to all DMs: if you make a mistake, you can probably do something with it. Maybe don't make legendary magic items cost 2,000 GP though. Edit 2. A lot of people have been saying that I should have made it a scam, or otherwise made the magic items useless or way too difficult to use right after they bought them. While that is an idea, keep in mind that this was the next to last session, and they barely managed to beat the final boss on time. All of these stories are reminding me that the one DM I had that sucked. I had the power to talk to animals. First thing that happens in the quest is a wolf comes out of the woods and tries to attack us. I insisted on talking to the wolf. The DM stated I wasn't allowed. I questioned why I had the power then. He then let me talk to the wolf, and I asked it why it was attacking us, because was the answer I got. This was the first time I played and it sucked. I ended up playing again with a different group not too long after, and the DM was great in letting us do stupid like that and had a pretty good story for random things happening. My first DM almost ruined the game for me, lol. Story 11. Players had to reach an island with no bridge ship access across piranha-infested waters. A paladin's plan was to bless the beef jerky in his inventory to give it more longevity, throw it in the water, and swim for dear life. I let it pass, and of course he rolled a 20, causing the jerky to become infinite jerky, thus distracting the piranhas long enough for the party to casually tread their way to the island. Story 12. Not the DM, but a companion to the player that did it. DM designed a boss lair with a column of flowing lava. He only intended it to be there for aesthetic, and a potential pitfall for the players. The boss was an immense behemoth. The team mage was a first-time player and shyly asked if their magic could allow them to do something with the lava. DM said sure, why not. The mage proceeded to get a notably high sense check roll, and then rolled a nat 20 on their action, which the team persuaded the DM into interpreting that the entire lava flow was magically bent and directed at the boss. What was supposed to be a penultimate boss was literally one-shot by the most novice player. Story 13. Letting a real-life chem major have access to a bunch of raw materials. Bombs for days, boys. Edit for those wondering about metagaming and player versus character knowledge. The character was built with the science crafting equivalents to a surgeon's treat injury check. I just didn't realize how little it takes to make the world burn to the ground. Science is scary. Story 14. Character wanted a deck of many things-esque D20 that manifested random magic effects when rolled. Sure, why not? One of the bad effects was everyone had to make a save, and if they failed, they became hostile towards the character. So it happens a few times. Character knows full well that his die can make that happen. They meet Gresh, the Unspeakable, the council leader of a town ruled by ghosts, reputed to have conquered entire worlds in life. He rolls the die upon meeting him, and it lands on the hostility effect. Gresh, being a ghost, possesses the character and makes him slit his own throat. Story 15. One of the players in my group asked if they could add a new person into the game. Sure, why not? New player joins. I want to play a ranger and a bit of a loner. Sure, why not? A few sessions in and the new player is not adjusting well. She wanted DD to be more like watching Legolas in LOTR. Never miss and completely awesome. On top of that, she wants to constantly go off on her own and not really be a part of the group, both her and her character. I am running a combat where the party gets split up and divided and there is a heavy fog in the area. She sees our druid as a bear-wreaking house and generally being a bear, and says I'm going to shoot the bear. Now I'm not one to limit player choices, but I caution her in the context of the fight it could have been seen as an accident, and let her know this would be an acceptable time to metagame. She does it anyway. Druid in game shifts back and says it's me. Ranger says I knew that. And then I just let the fight between them play out. And that was the last time I saw the ranger as a person. Story 16. My group of players had just defeated an evil spirit that could possess the bodies of the recently deceased to gain the strength, attributes, memories, etc. of the dead. Basically, the person who died and the spirit who possessed the body were difficult to tell apart aside from the spirit's ultimate driving purpose, to live in the most powerful body it could and to obey the commands of its creator. Well, the party member who died during the fight asked me in private if the spirit could have taken over his body despite the party following a ritual and destroying its true form. Sure, why not? That's a cool way to bring the character back. The party knew the limits and motivations and everything right now, so I figured they'd figure out the mysteriously resurrected party member was the spirit. Nope, they didn't pick up on it, only the player who was brought back knew, and he didn't share the secret. Well, they eventually fought the spirit's master, and let's just say that boy was that a huge reveal. Story 17. I started a campaign where the group was coming together at a coastal town. A massive titan rose from the water some distance from shore and was meant to be a cinematic incident triggering a chain of prophetic events, but there's one in every group. Among the level ones, one of the guys decided he was going to swim out and challenge the thing. It wasn't what I intended, but I allowed it and forced stat checks once he got into deep enough water since he didn't have the swim skill. He failed and started drowning. Cue the ill save him from another player. Failed stat check for that person as well, so now two are drowning. This continued until the entire party was drowning just offshore, because none of them knew how to swim and all failed their checks. I stared at the chaos and said it. Lucky for them, a pod of dolphins came to the rescue. As their characters lay half-drowned in the sand, I made it abundantly clear they had used up their only gimme for that campaign, and to make smarter character-driven choices. Story 18. I had an NPC accompanying the party for a bit. They were going to be traveling for a while by ship, so I made sure he had talking points. I wrote him a backstory and did my best to cover bases and anticipate questions the party would have. Over time it came out that this NPC had a lost love. He told them that he cut ties with her because he knew he was going to be gone for years and didn't think that would be fair to her. The party convinced him to go back and try to rekindle that relationship. Several very high rolls later, he agrees. What followed was my single greatest session as a DM: tension, resolution, emotion, laughter. Character development. It ended with a wedding, a party, and everyone literally in tears from laughing so hard. Still the standard I hold myself to. It's been a wonderful experience. Story 19. Not the DM, but the player who asked to allow something. Final session of the campaign. We're working our way through a labyrinth. We discover that the godlike BBG had created identical clones of us, so we had to fight ourselves before getting to him. Upon killing Clone Me, I asked whether I could take Clone MES gold to double my total income. Sure, why not? They have all of your weapons and items. Emphasis mine. His reasoning was it's the final session. What does it matter? Lightbulb. So then after we split up, I managed to find who I was looking for, the clone of the Artificer. Killed him and took his bag of holding. I told the DM I wanted to grab the bag and get the scooter out of it. This campaign had some weird time distortion stuff, so we had some random real-world items. He allowed it sweet boost to movement speed. He figured it was the last session, so who cares? We get to the final boss. Artificer knows I have the clone's bag of holding. We lock eyes and grin. For those unaware, placing a bag of holding inside an extra-dimensional space created by a handy haversack, portable hole, or similar item instantly destroys both items and opens a gate to the astral plane. The gate originates where the one item was placed inside the other. Any creature within 10 feet of the gate is sucked through it to a random location on the astral plane. The gate then closes. The gate is one way only and can't be reopened. He throws me his bag of holding, and I scooter up to BBG and place his bag of holding inside of mine. We're both gone. End of campaign. Ultimately the group ruled not to allow it, because they wanted to actually fight. The DM, my brother, was rather irritated. LOL. TLDR DM said sure, why not, allowing duplicated items. I took advantage and used 2 bags of holding to defeat the BBG. We were playing D20 and my girlfriend was running the campaign. It was set in this post-apocalyptic wasteland, and we were just coming up from the underground. Upon reaching the surface, due to radiation ECT, we were supposed to pick a new power or physical feature. I picked something like the ability to go invisible or some, I don't remember. My brother who was playing with us is trying to come up with something for his character and he sheepishly asks, can I have lady legs? We thought he was joking until I saw his expression. My girlfriend goes, I guess. So he took lady legs as his perk and proceeded to successfully attract a key NPC we needed in order to get into a building. Guess it was worth it. Story 20. Obligatory player warning. And this was very much a lack of wanting to define something one way as opposed to another, but I think it counts. We get into a fight with a bunch of guards, and would basically lose thanks to the sheer numbers game and the fact our party doesn't have a dedicated healer. I'm playing the handy-dandy rogue and go sifting through my inventory and find a bag of exactly 1,000 steel ball bearings. Hey DM, if I were to fling, say a steel ball bearing at someone out of a sling, how much damage would it do? DM tells me it'd do a d4. I ask if it would be the same if I could get it propelled by a spell strong enough to easily shove a half-orc 10 feet. Sure, why not? Insert trollface here. Because I ask our Eldritch Knight if he knows Thunderwave. Surprise, he does. Half an hour later, the DM was still rolling and sorting D4s and the lowest damage done was in the low 400s. Of course, the whole party was mulched, but you know, win some, lose some. Story 21. I offered one of my players to earn easy XP by paying off some old lattice debt after finishing a session. The old woman was just a random NPC, but the players asked if there was anything they could do to help. I was figuring that this would just be an easy swap of money for XP. To my surprise, he started asking me really pointed questions about her interest rate, collateral, principal investments, etc. Long story short, my players ended up inventing credit cards within this campaign setting. I had to keep track of their outstanding balances, minimum payments, and interest rates for several months afterwards. Story 22. Let a rogue hide in a pickle barrel while being chased by guards. Guard noticed the displaced pickle juice and came to check it out. Rogue sneak attacks out of the pickle barrel for a critical hit and kills him. Rogue pulls him away and gets back in the pickle barrel. Kills 2 more guards like this. They ended up lugging that pickle barrel through the whole dungeon, setting it up, drawing attention to it, and jack-in-the-boxing people. Story 23. Players were navigating through an evil sentient house that was toying with them. When they got to the end of the house and helped bury the dead, the house wasn't too pleased. But whatever, it would get more souls from other adventurers coming on. Then the monk decided to start punching the walls of the house and cursing it. Because why not? Monk walked through a door and took a critical hit from a swing blade and insta-gibbed him. Rest of the party apologized to the house and was let out. Story 24. The party nat 1D a stealth roll, silently removing loose bricks to sneak into a guard tower back office. The entire wall came down violently and loudly and woke the entire guard. Everyone else bailed down in a nearby ditch to hide. The bard asked to do something crazy. I obliged. He grabbed a cloth from his bag, sliced his hand and crudely marked the cloth with a gang symbol from a local criminal sect with his own blood. Having the only lit torch, he threw it into some nearby trees to draw the guards towards him and away from the party. Once in total darkness, he cast a spell to make it sound like he was still running down a path. While he ducked off into some brush to hide, the party somehow survived what should have been a party-killing failure without a single round of combat. As a plus, the guards, having seen the symbol, blamed the gang that was already causing trouble in the city, rounded up their members and hung them in the streets. I decided to roll with it, and what was going to be a classic dungeon exploration story became a story about city revolt and an iron-fisted city watch. Story 25. Not me, but a friend who was a player told me about this huge undead dungeon the DM had spent a lot of hours mapping out. DM has a nearby river, because the party needed a last-minute drink of water before going in. Why not? Turns out they rerouted the river into the dungeon entrance and had the cleric continuously bless the water flow. The holy water flow killed all the undead monsters, and the DM rage quit his own game that night. Story 26. One day our DM let us find flasks of oil or booze, can't remember, but think oil for some reason. I was a trouble-causing wizard with fire cantrips, but for some reason he didn't pick up on the fact that I was just looking for trouble with these. Later on in the dungeon we find some parchment of some kind and I had an idea. I tear the parchments into rags and use them to plug the bottles of flammable stuff. DM's eyes widen a little, but he goes sure, why not, and we went on with the dungeon. They sat in my inventory for some time, unused. Now this DM was a real stickler for realism at times, it has to be said. Story was a distant second priority for him. He also did not like going off the rails and the campaign was very linear. This is important for what happened next. We had an assignment where we headed off to confront a bandit gang. We were told they were all hiding in a rickety old mansion in the south of town. I could see the DM had meticulous maps and presumably endless traps in this giant mansion. Our group would be here for numerous sessions. IRLID had a few beers with the boys. I looked in my inventory and saw something written as Vermilion Soul Cocktails and suddenly had an idea. Hey DM, this house is pretty old and dry and rickety, right? Yeah, sure, that sounds about right. Stand back, everyone, I said. The DM goes, what are you doing? I take one of the improvised Vermilion Soul Cocktails out of my bag. Okay, I use my fire cantrip to light the rag on fire and toss the bottle into the house. DM, that highly flammable liquid ought to light that old dry rickety on fire, right? Yeah, that would be realistic, but he struggled for a second, but his realistic nature won out. The flames consume the mansion. Your party watches as the mansion burns to the ground along with numerous bandits. We took a smoke break after that while he threw together a new scenario. Apparently there was a stone trapdoor that escaped the flames and that turned into a smaller new dungeon, but we never forgot about the time we finished the whole week's dungeon in a few minutes. Side note, that same character in the game world accidentally burned down no less than half a continent. Story 27 sent people on a quest to rescue a king. Couldn't think of a cool name, called him Steve. When the group got to the captor's hideout and found it empty, my intention was to say they arrived too late for dicking around too much in a tavern in previous town. One of the group suddenly proclaims, no, it's not empty. I am Steve. I gave you this quest to save myself from myself. Whole table laughs, calling him ridiculous. He insists. I tell him he has to roll a 20 to reveal himself as Steve. He rolls a 20, end of mission. Story 28 had a player who constantly professed that his character, a rogue mage, was an atheist and on multiple occasions made fun of the party's cleric for being so foolish as to put their faith in an imaginary god. While it was incredibly irritating at times, I allowed it, not wanting to get in the way of their role-playing. Inevitably the time came when the rogue mage got downed and was bleeding out. He told the cleric to heal him angrily and the cleric obliged reluctantly, resulting in the interaction I'd been looking forward to for 3 sessions. See, I do cure minor wounds on RM. I rolled max hit points. RM awesome. I get up and use magic missile on me. No you don't. RM what, me cleric, you attempt to use cure minor wounds on RM, but for some reason the miracle doesn't work. It appears that Pelayer only has power over those who believe he exists. The immediate next session RM proclaims that his character is now an agnostic. Story 29 Ask Game Masters is a thing too. If you don't get much of a response from here, my very first time running a game I was incredibly inexperienced at that time. A player wanted to use a character of his from a different system, different campaign, different DM, I allowed it, and the game effectively became Tony Theater. I tried to keep things fair and fun, and the campaign wasn't a terribly long one, but the stuff I let him tell me his character could do was so far ahead and beyond what I should have allowed. In the end, the players all enjoyed themselves, so no harm really done. Story 30 let a party member throw a sword to deflect another thrown object in mid-air as a last-ditch effort to stop the Beg's plan. Of course it was a crit, and I had to rework my entire final act of the campaign. Bonus fun fact: few cult leaders are prepared for a face full of wild-shaped tiger. Story 31 I had a homebrewed campaign where one of my players was a hunter and wanted to pick this homebrewed hunter subclass because the hunter ones, I looked it over, it was cool, so I allowed it. The basis of this subclass was choosing one type of monster to hunt. I think the choices were vampires, werewolves, fiends, and that stuff. He chose werewolf. The progression you got in the subclass depended on your choice, and was themed around you becoming more like the beast you chose. I can't remember the specifics, and it was all somebody else's homebrewed stuff off the internet anyways. So they come upon a town soon after, and I think perfect time to have him encounter a werewolf in the city because both him and I are big Bloodborne fans. Funnily enough, he ignores the obvious signs of trouble in the quest: missing citizens in town, the government not doing much, people scared to go out at night in lieu of doing some shopping for new gear. His fighter friend took up the slack and actually pursued the disappearances, which culminated in a fight against a werewolf in an old guard weapons warehouse or something. After the fight, my werewolf hunter wanted to really embrace the whole becoming the beast and decided to consume some of the werewolf's blood. Going along with it, I explained to him how his body reacts to it, becoming somewhat ravenous and uncontrollable, but only for a short time. I think mechanically I gave him a bonus to Dex but penalty to Int. NPC invites the party to speak with the town mayor the next morning to receive a reward. Cool. Session overwrite. Sadly, the rest went to sleep, but Werewolf Hunter, in his ravenous state, decides it doesn't make sense to go lay down and wants to go out and explore the city. Everyone is ready to end the session, but logically that makes sense, so sure, why not now? My plan was to show the player that going off alone when the party is trying to end the session is a bad idea by instigating a mugging in the dark streets of this town. The mugging turns violent, which in turn turns fatal for the attackers because the group is at least level 5 by now. You can't kill people without consequence, however, and he soon finds guards chasing him throughout the town. He goes to leap over a high stone wall to get away, and luckily with the bonus dex plus his natural dex for being a hunter and proficiency in the skill he actually makes it. Now, I had pre-drawn the map of this entire town. It was pretty detailed, and the portion he was at that was drawn on the battle mat was, unbeknownst to the player, the wall to the mayor's mansion. He finds himself above the stables of this mansion, with quite a few guards patrolling the grounds. Bit of a pickle for the player trying to lead him towards just calling it a night by going back to the inn and sleeping. But no, what ensued was a nat 20 stealth check to sneak across the grounds, a nat 20 acrobatics check to scale the building's vines and bricks up to a small balcony, a nat 20 lockpicking check to enter into the mayor's personal chambers. A ravenous elven hunter then proceeded to murder the mayor with a crossbow to the face. There went my quest hook NPC, and all of the plans I had for that part of the story. 'Twas funny, these kinds of things happen far too often in my campaign. It was our first campaign and my characters all wanted to make murder hobo evil characters. We now play a much more normal campaign. Story 32 I was running a campaign that was a sequel to another campaign I ran for my friends and family several years earlier. It had been several years since we last played, and so I assembled the party and began preparations on the new campaign. Now, between edition changes and world setting changes, there was a lot of research and writing that went into the campaign. I had probably over 100 pages worth of encounters, character interactions, personal player storylines, and the entire town itself. I was writing this particular campaign to be a city campaign, meaning that all the players had homes, lives, and other personal attachments to that town. I had written backstories, family anthologies, and made the city every bit as much of a living entity as possible. Now, I wanted this particular campaign to be as open and wide-ranging as possible. I wanted to set up downtime in between adventures, so that the players could develop with me activities their characters would be working on in between sessions. This would give each player further opportunity to earn class-specific items or achievements, personal story developments, or whatever other enterprise they wanted their character to experience. I had used an online campaign tool and posted all of this information there so the players could read and respond and participate in between sessions. Well, one player, my brother, wanted to open up his own business in town for his off-time activity. Sure, why not? He wanted his business to act as a front for an underground thieves guild he wanted to run in town. Okay, I help him set up the front for the business, parse out resources for supplies and staffing the business, then provided names and character quirks for dozens of street urchins and other informants for him to use as part of his network. Then came a question as to how much money his business would earn as the progression of time happened in the game. I threw out some dollar amount. That's not enough. It says on page of the DMG stores and merchant shops should make per month. We work out some reasonable agreement to where his side venture isn't paying him more than what he would be getting from actually adventuring. Eventually discussions devolved into the minutiae of dollars per urchin, return on investments, and plans to excavate an underground illegal fighting pit below the city for further revenue. At this point my campaign writing had slowed down so much to accommodate the integration of this store frontside gig. My player was more focused on running his business than he was in the actual story, his own character, or the rest of the party. I eventually burnt out on the campaign from having to write and come up with pages and pages of information to make this side venture work. I wanted to write a DD campaign, not the historical business ledger of frauds, magic goods, and services. Story 33. We had two in the party that could raise and control the dead. Ended up having half a dozen skeletons that would go first into every room. Each got their own hit rolls. If one of them was defeated by whatever it was fighting, as soon as the fight was over, they would just raise dead again and use them for the next fight, plus whatever we just fought added on to the end of the parade. We basically did nothing the whole time because the DM said sure why not when they wanted to have a skeleton army. Story 34. Party managed to tame a bear through a series of increasing DC animal handling checks and animal friendship spells. The bear then was used in several fights, but most notably, landing killing crits on a will-o-wisp and a banshee on different nights. First one, they asked if the bear could eat the ghost. So I allowed it, and then had the bear get a white shock stripe down the middle of his back. Later one, when he got the banshee, he farted out the will-o-wisp. You see him toot, and a little wisp comes out, with a haunting scream, and the stripe on his back split in two, giving him 2 stripes, and his melee attacks were magical for the purposes of resistances. They wanted to go ghostbusting for the rest of the campaign, finding progressively stronger ghosts for their bear to eat. Edit: since we were using Roll20, Hey Race the Bear Darkwing was his name token and the player tokens that one of the players created.